So, there's a new Foo Fighters album, Your Favorite Toy. It's kind of disappointing. It kind of sounds like they've ran out of Foos to fight. Hey guys, hope you're well and welcome to my album review of Your Favorite Toy by the Foo Fighters. This follows the amazing and intensely emotional But Here We Are, which many fans, including myself, really enjoyed. I thought it was a fantastic record, which for me easily holds up as one of their best albums. The Foo Fighters' journey has been a little bit messy following Taylor Hawkins' passing. I mean, you've had some messy dramas with Dave Grohl apparently welcoming a child outside of his marriage, but also the very talented Josh Freese leaving the band without any sort of warning. We now have Ilan Rubin on the drums, who has collaborated with Nine Inch Nails and Paramore. So you can definitely tell that on this new album, Foo Fighters are trying to bring back this sort of spark and energy to their fan base. And on the whole, they sort of achieve this energy, but the execution really is not on point. Take Caught in the Echo, for example, the opening track. I mean, the riffs are exciting, the energy gets you pumped up, though lyrically it's nothing exceptional. Melodically, it kind of reminds me of Congregation off of Sonic Highways, which I actually also really enjoyed as an album. It also kind of gives off the same vibes as some of their earlier riffs. You can tell it's got this punk rock energy edge, and the focus is sort of more on keeping this sound alive rather than, thinking of introspective and thought-provoking lyrics. Straight off the bat, you can sort of tell, and it was the same with the singles, that this new upcoming album is not meant to be as emotional and as grief-stricken as But Here We Are was. That was more of an album that focused on Taylor Hawkins and also the passing of Dave Grohl's mother. It does sort of feel like this album is trying to appeal to fans, especially older fans who grew up with this hard and punk rock sound. It doesn't follow the same formula as Medicine at Midnight did, for example, which had this more pop energy. You get songs like Of All People, which actually I quite liked as well. It's got this sort of big FU energy. It's about a drug dealer who's managed to survive throughout all these years, capitalizing off of other people's health. But to me, it can also be seen as a bit of a metaphor in which great people die young, whereas, people who are just downright awful tend to live forever. Window was not a track I particularly enjoyed. It was actually one of my least favorites. It felt like the energy levels dropped. It was a bit repetitive and my interest just wasn't held. Then you have the lyrics, which are also a bit off-putting. I wasn't convinced by lyrics like, then I saw your face in the window, you were a window cleaner letting in the sun. I mean, come on, that just doesn't really scream Foo Fighters to me. But then what's even more off-putting is, in my opinion, the worst Foo Fighters song to date, which was the title track that came out as a single a couple months ago, Your Favorite Toy. Dave Grohl's vocals and the mixing on this track are just, downright awful. And then the lyrics, again, just give off really immature vibes, considering the fact that most of this album gives off divorced dad energy. It kind of comes off a bit whiny, but I think mainly the vocal compressions are just crazy to me. It does feel like instead of fighting Foos, the Foo Fighters should consider fighting the vocal compressions that they've been adding to a lot of these songs in the past couple albums. I mean, in my opinion, it worked really well stylistically in But Here We Are because it was an album about grief and overcoming mental struggles. And I wouldn't have minded this vibe, but I do feel that Dave Grohl's vocals are actually pretty good. I don't feel like they need to compress them so much and add these vocal filters on top of his voice. If You Only Knew and Unconditional were pretty decent tracks as well. They didn't make me feel many emotions and they weren't necessarily reinventing the wheel. But it does feel like they were trying to capture a sort of more nostalgic and older sound that some of their earlier work had, such as their debut album. And then Spitshine, though lyrically it's a bit less annoying than the title track, it's this sort of hard rock punk song, and I kind of get what they were going for here, but wow, I mean, those vocal compressions actually hurt my ears. So yeah, that's definitely another one of my least favorite tracks here. Then you have Child Actor, which is yet another weak song. I don't feel like much thought was put into any of the lyricism on this track at all, with the repetition of Turn the Cameras Off getting really grating after a while. I was kind of hoping it would honor Stacked Actors as a bit of a sequel to that song, but I just wasn't feeling this at all. It doesn't even have the hard rock energy that some of the other tracks have. Luckily, it's not awful, although the middle section of the album really does let you down. The last couple tracks are pretty decent again, especially Asking for a Friend. It has this lively build-up of different instruments and guitars and the bass and the drums. It kind of reminds me of one of the better tracks off of Concrete and Gold. Again, I kind of got the same sort of energy and feeling as Run, for example, which has an epic bridge and outro to round off the song. I was kind of hoping for more of that energy. I mean, I quite enjoyed Concrete and Gold as an album in the first half, but the second half did let me down. And up until this album came out, I would say that Concrete and Gold was probably their weakest album. I'm actually a bit of a Medicine at Midnight defender. I do feel like they were going for more of a pop-based sound, and I do think it kind of paid off on the whole. You do have some amazing songs like Making a Fire, Waiting on a War, and even Cloud Spotter and Holding Poison, which I think are great tracks. And also Dave Grohl's vocals on those albums are a lot more comprehensible than what we get here. I was kind of afraid that But Here We Are was just sort of a standalone one-off great album by the Foo Fighters because they were dealing with lots of stress and grief after losing, beloved band members and also family members as well. I mean, that album was super consistent. It was hard hitting. It hit you in the feels, but it was just an overall great album from start to finish. And I'm unfortunately not feeling that with this new album, Your Favorite Toy. I feel like the start and finish of this album were pretty decent enough. And my favorite tracks on this album are actually the first two and the last two songs on the album. So Caught in the Echo, Of All People, Amen Caveman, and Asking for a Friend. But everything in the middle section, including all those terrible vocal compressions and slightly cringe-inducing lyrics, just really let the score down. I mean, my least favorite tracks on here are the title track, Your Favorite Toy, Spitshine, Child Actor, and Window. So although I'm a big Foo Fighters fan and I still got a little bit of enjoyment from the instrumentals on this album, I don't see myself coming back to this much at all. If I want hard-hitting and punk rock tracks, I'd rather just revisit highlights from Wasting Light like White Limo, or even some of the more emotional songs off of But Here We Are, such as The Teacher and even the title track on that album. If I want a more pop-based sound, I'm still gonna enjoy Medicine at Midnight and even some of the singles from Concrete and Gold. So yes, unfortunately, I do think this is the Foo Fighters' weakest album to date. And I do think I'm being quite generous with the score I'm about to give, which is, I'm feeling a 5.5 out of 10. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this album review. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. That would be fantastic. And let me know in the comments below what you thought of this brand new Foo Fighters album. Were you disappointed like I was, or did you happen to love it? But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.